Okay, so to start a campaign, you're going to do some certain things before you actually get into battling and everything. So the first thing you're going to do is create a party, and what you're going to do is fill out the party sheet.
Pretty self-explanatory. Get a name for your group. Your location.
I think when you start, it's just Black Burrow.
Yeah,
that's the first place.
Right, and there's a space for your notes, which you won't have any when you very first start, and your achievements, again, which you won't have any when you start. But as Jeb mentioned earlier, there is a reputation for your party. So when you start the game, you're going to be at 0, but then you can go up and down. And there's actually kind of two tracks here. So this is the reputation, because you might be hard to read, and that has
what the actual reputation value is.
Yeah, and then over here it's the shop price modifier. So this is the reputation number, and this is what's going to happen when you're in the shop based on your reputation. So as you can see, you get a bonus to prices if your reputation is high, and it's going to cost you more if you have a lousy reputation to buy stuff. And remember, this is party-wide too. So it doesn't matter how good of a boy you've been individually. Remember, this is like, I don't know, I guess kind of semi-co-op. It's more co-op than not, but you do have definitely individual things going on.
Yeah. All right. Next, players are going to get their characters. So you're going to take all
these components that we talked about before. The dial, the card, the figure.
Pretty much everything in there and in here.
Right.
So
your own player pad, etc. Those are going to be put in front of you. Just real quick, each of the modifier decks, the attack modifier decks, have a number in the bottom left corner. So you can quickly see, because it doesn't matter who has it, just that this deck is number 1. So there needs to be 20 number 1s in this deck for a player to be able to use it. That's the point. And there's 20 of them. There'll always be 20 of them.
And as far as I know. Yeah, one of the things that people have kind of messed up online that I read about was when you open this, there's actually some attack modifier cards in a plastic thing.
Those aren't the ones to use.
You do not use these to start with.
Those are your upgrades.
Yeah, so those come out in the future. Just put those back in the box.
Right. Remember, look for these ones with the number down at the bottom here.
Yep.
And you'll be good.
There's 4 sets of 20 for the players.
Because it's a 4-player game. Yep. And 1 set for
the monsters.
The monsters.
All right, so once you get your character, you're going to fill out the sheet, which has your name, and you're going to start at level 1 with 0 experience and 30 gold. Okay, so after you fill out that sheet, you are going to get 2 personal quests. So we mentioned earlier the personal quests, which are your life goals for your character. Everybody's going to get 2 of them. You get to look at them, keep one, and the other goes back into this deck. So
remember, this is campaign mode, people.
Yes, this is just all campaign stuff. So the next thing, you're going to look at the giant world map, and you are going to place the Black Burrow sticker on it for the very beginning.
Right.
And that means that that's where you can travel. So we have not done that yet because we're hopeful for removable stickers.
Yeah, we're just keeping notes of what we have access to right now.
Yeah.
We'll make a decision on something at some point in time, but we haven't even got the Black Burrow yet, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So after you put the sticker on the map, you get to spend the money that you have to get items. And one of the important things is at the very beginning of the game, on the back of the items, you only get 1 through 14 are available to buy from. So you have 30 gold. I think in the book it has a recommended starting items.
It does. It has recommended starting items for each of the 6 starting characters. As a matter of fact, that's what we choose when we played the game. All of us have the recommended starting items with our characters, just an FYI. And as an aside, it sucked up all our gold.
Yeah. It came out to be exactly 30.
We were all excited. Whoa, we get 30 gold to start? And then we were like, oh, stuff's expensive.
Yeah. All right, so once everybody buys their items, you are going to draw a road event. You pick the scenario that you want to go to, and then you have to do a road event to get there. So you resolve that, and then you're going to set up the scenario and play it.
May I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can't you optionally do a city if you want? Since you're in Gloomhaven? I thought you told me that.
Yeah, you can. They don't really say anything specific about doing it the first time you start a campaign, but yes, it is an option.
Technically you could, but
right.
We chose not to.
Yeah.
Because we figured we have enough problems without worrying about what's going on in the city.
So, after you do the road event, you're going to set up the scenario like the scenario book says. You'll play through it, which we'll go over in a minute. And then once it finishes, you can either return to Gloomhaven or you can continue on to the next scenario. And I believe depending on what you choose, you might have to do another road event. But if you do a connected scenario or you have to redo a scenario, you don't have to do a road event if you immediately do it. And then once you're in Gloomhaven, there's a bunch of things you can do. You can level up if you've passed the level up point, which increases your HP, gives you new ability cards, and you get a perk. You can buy and sell items, which we talked about buying items. I think selling them, it's, what is it? I think it's half value.
The price, I think.
Yeah. You can do a city event, which is optional, or you can, and also if your hero has completed their personal quest, you can retire your hero and then create a new hero. So, and that's pretty much everything for a campaign. So it's pretty much going to be, you're traveling around, any road events that happen along the way, you do them. You can go back to Gloomhaven to like level up or improve your character, but it's going to be just doing a bunch of scenarios, right?
Well, that's kind of the way the game goes.
So that's pretty much how you start the campaign mode, and we kind of talked about everything. So we will start talking about a scenario.
No spoilers, because this is where everybody starts. You would open your scenario to the scenario you're going to. This is a picture of what it looks like in the book, and you would start reading and stop where it, like, here's an intro. When you get to one of these, you'll stop, and there's how you can set up the board. And I think Jeb is going to touch on setting up the board some.
Yeah. So after you consult the book, the first thing you're going to do is set up the play area, which is just grabbing the map tiles that it lists and setting them up in the formation that it has. So I don't know, should I just slide that over?
Sure. So I'm going to move this away since we already have this diagram set up, except it's going to look upside down to you guys from what it looks like in the book.
Alright, and we've connected them all because you can kind of like place them in there.
Yep.
Set up the play area. Next up, you're going to set up your hero area, which is just gathering all the stuff for your hero. You have your own little personal area. So one of the important things to do, though, is getting your ability cards. And I think that's what you might have wanted to talk about it or not.
Yep. So on your character card, up in the top right corner, tells you how many cards you get, how many cards you can use. Okay? You're limited by your level, so you get to start with level 1 cards. If we take a look at one of the hero cards, you can see right here, there's a level 1. And so
there is a rule about level X cards,
right,
which can be used at any time, but it recommends just starting with level 1s.
Yes. So this particular hero says 8 cards, and nice and conveniently, actually, when you open your hero cards, they have exactly the number that your hero starts with, level 1 cards. There are also, like Jeb just mentioned, X cards where that 1 would be. Technically, they're allowed to be used. They do highly recommend that you just start with the level 1 cards if you're new to the game. And that's what we've all chosen to do when we play the game for the first time. We just didn't even look at the level X cards.
Yeah.
We put them right back in, not to be tempted to do something stupid. So, and for an example, my character has 8. I believe Jeb gets 10 cards,
Yep.
and
Gary's
Gary
10.
will be playing with 10 cards also.
Okay, so for setting up the hero area, you got your hero board. You set your dials to 0 for experience, and your HP is a corresponding level that is on your character board. You grab your ability cards, which we talked about. You get your attack modifier deck, which in the very beginning, it's the 20 basic cards. But there are, as you progress through the game, you can modify that. And then lastly, you're going to place your equipment next to your hero card as well. So whatever you have bought or currently have, you can...
Yep, so he's talking about these type of things. Just keep them where you can, where you have access to them, whatever works best for you.
Yep. So, after you do that, all the players are going to get 2 of the battle goal cards, and they get to look at them and choose to keep 1, and that just applies for this scenario.
Right, so those were the little cards that had the check marks on them. So, some of them have 2, some of them have 1, based on difficulty.
Yeah. After that, well, we kind of already have the map built.
Yep.
So, determine the difficulty.
Okay, we're not going to really get into this.
Yeah.
When you start the game, just start. Unless you want to go gung ho, you're probably going to start as normal. Everybody starts at level 1. There's a mathematical calculation when you want to get really detailed on how you're supposed to figure out the level. I don't think we're going to go into that right now. You can read it in the rule book. It's not too hard.
Yeah. And there is a chart in the book that
Helps you with the modifiers and
Yes.
stuff.
So you can just consult the book. So we're going to be difficulty 1. So that's what we chose. You're going to gather the enemies. So what you do is gather the enemy cards, the
So you would go
sleeves.
back down. You'd be referencing the scenario book again. You'd look down here. This is everything you need. So these 3 here are the enemies you need, and these are the tiles that you're going to need, overlay tiles that you're going to need.
Yep. So for the monsters, you're going to grab the standees, the stat cards, and the sleeves, and you place the stat cards in the sleeves with whatever level that the monsters are going to be at. So turns out all of ours are going to be level 1. Next, you're going to shuffle all the decks that you have, like the attack modifier decks. You don't actually shuffle your ability cards because they're in your hand. And you are going to shuffle the monster ability decks as well. That's one thing that gets shuffled. And then there's the monster attack modifier deck. So all that stuff gets shuffled. Then you are going to place the enemies on the board. And there is something special about this because most games you just kind of put everything on the board. But Gloomhaven is a little bit different.
And the difference in Gloomhaven is you only populate the current room until you go into another room or actually reveal another room, open a door, however you want to say it. It stays empty until that point in time. So as you can see in this scenario, just for example, this is the starting room. These little symbols are the allowable spots for your heroes to come into. So this is the only room that would be populated. Now you can put the doors on.
Yes.
That
is
as a matter of fact, we actually put the non-essential stuff, meaning the things that weren't villains.
Like we threw the traps down. And
Just so they were already there. We haven't played enough to know if that really makes a difference. I can't imagine that it really would, because those things don't move. Right. So it was just kind of a convenience thing rather than like, oh, I opened the door, now I have to go dig through these things. Although you you're gonna have them pulled out anyways. It's just it was a preference. That's what we did.
If you guys have played this and know that it does make a difference, just say in the comments it makes a difference. Don't tell us why.
Yeah.
Well, I assume we'll find out as well, but that's how we're gonna do it.
Yeah. So this is like what we did. We had this stuff. Actually, we even had the treasure chests and the random loot laying around. And we just didn't do the monsters. Right. So at this point, we would put the monsters into the first room.
Yep. You will look at the book, and there is a little diagram on how to tell what monster gets populated where.
Yeah, so this is where the monsters potentially could get populated. And what Jeb is talking about is in the rule book. This is what it looks like. Alright. So if hopefully you can see this pretty clear. I think you can. So what this means is you look at the legend in the scenario book, and you look where the monsters are placed, and you look at the monsters, and you look at the sides. So top left is for 2 players, top right is for 3 players, and bottom is for 4 players. So
we're a 3-player game.
We're a 3-player game. And then the key down here says if it's filled in black, there's no monster. If it fills in white, it's a normal monster. And if it's yellow, it's an elite monster. So you look at the tile, and for us, if this has anything other than white, this corner for us, then it's going to populate.
No, anything other than black.
Anything other than black. Said it backwards. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's what it means. So we go back to the scenario book, and this is probably hard for you to see, but
the top right?
Right. So this one is white. This one's white. This one's white. Oh, that doesn't populate because that's black. This is white. This is white. This is white.
So, in other words, that means we're getting 6 monsters on the field.
Right.
So, what you do when you populate, you are going to randomize which monsters come out where. So, I already put the standees on there. I shook them up, and I'm placing them on the board without looking at their numbers.
And why does that matter?
Because
like Jeb just said, he said, I'm not looking at their numbers. Because the numbers on the standees is the order in which, on their turn, they attack the heroes.
Yep. Alright, so once the enemies are on the board, you are going to place your heroes on the board. On the map, it says where you can start, so I think that's one place.
And we know that's one place.
I don't see Gary's.
He's back in the box. It doesn't. I mean, it's like a little row down here.
Yeah.
So it's very clear in the book where you can put your heroes.
And then after you place your heroes, you're going to grab the elemental infusion deck, place all the elements in...
He meant board, not deck. There's no cards
there. Place all the elements in the inert position, so nothing's active. And then the round marker, only if the scenario says to put it on, or to keep track of it, is when you would use it.
And the first one doesn't, so you won't even need it.
And that's everything for setup for a scenario. So once you have that done, you can start playing. For gameplay of Gloomhaven, what happens is you play over a certain number, either a certain number of rounds, or you just keep playing rounds until the game ends. You succeed or you fail.
Right.
So, what does a round consist of? It consists of 4 phases. The first phase is card selection. So, what do you do in card selection, Mickey?
Alright, so in card selection, if you remember, you have a starting hand of cards. You look at your cards, and you pick 2 of them. Alright? I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail, but the idea is, obviously, you're going to be having a strategy on what you want to do. Okay? So, the cards are separated in 2 halves. There's a bottom half and a top half. And you are going to be able to use one bottom half and one top half. So that's part of your strategy. The second part is that every card in the middle of the card has an initiative number. So you have to choose one of the two cards that you pick to be your initiative card. And basically what you want to do is, in some manner, we're all using put on the top, because you're going to put these face down once you've selected your cards, because your colleagues are not going to know what you're playing. Okay, this is information is not, like, you can't be specific with what you're doing during this game. It doesn't recommend that. So you're not going to be like, I'm not going to be like, hey, Jeb, I'm playing an initiative 15.
Okay, Mickey, then I'll play an initiative 20.
You can go. You could say something like, hey, Jeb, I think I'm going to be able to go pretty early in the round.
Yeah.
That's acceptable.
Or, my feet are feeling kind of fast today, Jeb.
Right, or something like that. Something that indicates that you're hoping that you're going to go early in the round, great. So if you're not familiar with initiative, basically what that means is that after everybody's selected the cards, we're going to flip these over, and then the lowest numbers are going to go first. And that includes the monsters. They also have an initiative card that they're going to flip, and that's going to say when they get to go in the order. Okay? Hopefully that made sense. Again, you're going to pick two cards, decide what your strategy is going to be, because remember, you only get one top and one bottom. Alright? And then pick the initiative you want, put that on top, put these face down. Okay?
And that's it for that phase, is just selecting the stuff. There is one other thing for this phase. You can choose to do a long rest instead. We will talk about that later, but on your player board, it actually splits it and says, in that phase you can play two cards or do a long rest. So the next phase, as Mickey said, is determine initiative. So right now there are heroes on the board and there are guards on the board. So what's going to happen is everybody flips their card. So I have an initiative of 32.
I have a 21.
And then the guard deck flips, because any monsters that are on the board, their deck is going to flip.
Right.
And they have an initiative
30.
of 30.
Perfect. So, if still not following along, what that means is I'm going to go first.
Lowest number goes first.
Then the guards are going to go.
Yep.
And then Jeb's going to go.
Yep.
21, 30, 32. So as you can see, since it's all random, this could change every round on who goes when.
The next phase are character and monster turns. So pretty much flipping these cards is an entire phase. It's just the determine initiative phase.
Right.
So once that's done...
So now we know whose turn it's going to be throughout the... When each player's turn is and monster throughout this particular round. And in this case, I'm going to go first. And that would be, now that we've determined this, now we go into the player...
The character
character turns.
Alright, so... On a character's turn, what you're going to do, you can now flip both of your cards over. Since Mickey's going first, we'll use him as the example. He flips both of his cards over. He is able to choose the top of one and the bottom of the other. There are kind of like base values on your card.
So what Jeb's talking about is, now that that's over, I get these cards. And I want to make it very clear to point this out. Once the initiative phase is over, doesn't matter how I use these cards. I can use this higher one first, or I can use the one that won me the initiative. Doesn't matter. The key is that I have to use a top and a bottom, a top and a bottom. Okay, I can't use both tops and I can't use both bottoms.
We do recommend that you do something to remember which card is your initiative, or the leading card.
Because it is actually, it can be a tiebreaker in some cases.
Yes.
We didn't really have that much of a problem remembering who went first, though. We thought it might be a little bit harder, but it's really not. You remember during the round who went first. But just in case it was close, you could do something with the card.
Right.
Jeb also mentioned... instead of these main abilities, each of these cards has little numbers in these on the left-hand side of the top or the bottom. you can use that instead of whatever it says in there.
Usually the big boxes are more powerful
Right.
things, and if you don't want to use that, then you can
Right.
use the tiny box.
Right. So it could prevent you from wasting a card is basically what it does. Like maybe something happened in the round and things didn't go your way, and you're like, well, I don't want to waste that good attack.
Yeah,
on...
why waste an attack 6 when
So
an attack 2?
basically what all the cards have, top half is a attack 2, and the bottom half is a move 2. That's what it is. So you always have access to those, and that's important based on how some of these other mechanics work in the game, which we'll explain in a minute. Okay, so this is where the game really, in my opinion, starts to become pretty unique. So in normal circumstances, what happens to a card is, assuming that it has no special symbols or whatever on it, is my player board. I'm going to move it up for a second. I just played this card for just a basic no ability, or I could have even done this main one too. It doesn't matter because there's no symbols like this on there, so it just gets discarded. Discarding is to the left side of my player board. Okay. However, for an example, if I play this card and I use this ability, notice that there is a card symbol with an X through it. That means this card is now lost. Lost is on the right side of your character board. There is also one other section of your character board that cards may enter into, and that is called the active section, which is at the top. So some cards may be good for the entire round, good for the rest of the game,
good until they die.
Good until they die, and what we mean by that is some of the cards have a little tracker on it. You put your token on it, and you just move it across the card until it's all done. Jeb was looking for one. I got one right here.
Okay.
Alright. So see, this card's got some circles, and so when this card came out, I would put a token on it. Every time it triggered, since it's active now, I would slide the token across, and then when it goes off the last space, this card goes to wherever it says it goes. In this case, it says it gets lost. Now, if you're wondering, lost means exactly what it is. It's really, really difficult, basically almost entirely impossible a lot of times to get these back. And that is what I was referring to, and where this game gets kind of unique, because the hand management is off the charts. Because some of these ones that you have to lose are really good. So you better have perfect timing when you use them.
Okay, so that's what happens when you use a card. Let's talk about some things that you can do on your turn. So as Mickey mentioned before, there's movement. So how does movement work, Mickey? If there was a card that said move 2.
So if I used a move 2, I could take my character and I could move him 2 hexes any way I want. He could dance as long as he was moving 2. What he can't do is he can't move through an enemy.
Right.
He can move through an ally, but he cannot land on the same space as an ally.
Then there is also jumping and flying.
So if you have the jump ability, jumping is sort of kind of like flying. So you can ignore the obstacles in your way. The key is you have to land on a valid space.
The last space that you land on counts as a normal movement. It doesn't count as like a flying movement.
Right.
So because I think if you end when you do a movement that's flying, you can end on top of like a trap, and it won't hurt you.
Shoot, yes.
But if you jump, if you land on that trap, you're getting hit.
Right. Which would be like if you jumped onto a trap.
Yeah. Instead of flying.
Above it. Yeah.
All right. So there are traps and terrain on the board. I believe there's harmful terrain, normal terrain, and I think it's 2 movement to go through rough terrain, stuff like that. And then the other thing is when you step on a door.
Right. So if I'm moving along, la-di-da, oh look, all the guards are ignoring me. and I step on the door. The second that I step on the door opens. Oh, look, open door. Look at that. Door's open, and then this room populates.
It's a big timeout.
Yep.
And populate that room.
Populate the room. Then finish whatever you're doing on your turn.
Well, before you do that, well, it's kind of strange.
Okay.
When you populate, if it's a new monster that appears, you're going to flip an initiative card for that
That's true.
monster.
You're going to set, get him ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's very important because...
Because after you do the populating, you finish
Right.
your turn.
So after it's all populated, you're making sure that the monster, like Jeb just said, say a new monster comes out.
Say an archer comes out.
Right. So he would flip a card.
That's the archer card. I don't know if
Okay.
you can see that.
And you're like, well, why? Well, after I finish my turn, you go back and you check his initiative.
That archer came out with a 16 initiative.
Right.
And if you remember, Mickey started with a 20. So you're like, oh, it's not going to go this turn.
Wrong. So that's why you check what they flipped once they populate. And if they missed their turn, they immediately go after you've completed everything you did, what you're doing on your turn. Or if they haven't missed their turn, then they would activate as normal in order. So say in this case, the guards were going to go next. Now the archers are, well, that's not a really good example because they were before.
Well, Mickey was a 20. He ends his turn. But since this 16's on the field and they haven't activated, they instantly go. And then it would be the guard, and then it would be me. But if the archer had flipped a 32, Mickey was a 20. This is a 32. But the guards were a 30, so the guards activate, and then it's either going to be me or the archer, depending on the tiebreaker, which I'll look up and put a note.
Right. There's a lot of rules, folks. Again, like I said, we don't have them all down yet.
So that's what happens when you land on a door and you open it.
Right, and again, so in this case, there's some stuff back here, and there's that stuff up here. I think in our scenario with 3, 1 populates here, and then 3 populate back here. And these are archers.
Yeah.
Just, we're not going to put them on, but just so you know what would have happened when that door opened.
We're just going to pretend Mickey moved up in front of those guys.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Maybe Jeb.
Yeah, let me do it, because I'm a melee guy. So, we talked about movement, so the other thing that's important is attacking.
Yep.
So the way attacking works is you are going to determine if your attack is melee or ranged. So on your card, it will either say ranged, or it won't say ranged. If it doesn't say ranged, then it's not ranged. Melee.
Which is interesting. So here's an example. So this says attack 2, and then it says a range of 3. I'll ignore the special stuff right now. But then you can see Jeb's card just says attack 3, and then he has a special ability on that one too. Yeah. The point is, since there's no subtext of range, it means it's a melee attack. If it says ranged under it, it is a ranged attack. Ranged can't be ignored. So in other words, if I have this card, I can't walk up to the monster and say, I'm not going to be ranged this time.
Right.
It's a ranged attack if it has the word ranged in it. That's important because there are advantages and disadvantages and things like that, and that comes into play sometimes.
Yep. So for melee attacks, you have to be adjacent to your target.
Yep.
And for range, you have to be within the range that the card says.
Right. You have to be within the range, but not adjacent. Right?
You can be adjacent, but you get disadvantaged if you're adjacent.
Okay. Fair enough.
Real quick for ranged, you have to check line of sight when you do it.
Super simple in this game for line of sight. It's basically if you can draw a straight line from the corner of the hex you are in to the corner of the hex you want to attack.
Any corner, right?
Any corner, then you can attack it. The only thing that blocks line of sight in this game are walls. and I think that like the edge counts as a wall if it's not specifically on the card.
So like these tables, they don't block line of
don't
sight.
block line of sight. Characters don't block line of sight. Enemies don't block line of sight. You can just shoot crap.
Yeah. Alright, so that's kind of the start of an attack. Then for the actual attack, what you're going to do is draw an attack modifier card. So say I have this attack 3. So that means if I'm adjacent to a guy, I'm attacking for 3, but then I have to flip the top card of my modifier deck for every attack that I do. So since it's just one attack, I flip one card. And as you can see, that's a big +1.
So now he's an attack 4.
Yep.
So at that point, he would consult the
Monster.
the character sheet.
Yep. The Bandit Guard, a normal one, has no special effects.
Yep.
And it has 6 health.
And it has and if it had some kind of shield, it would be on the special effects.
The elite guy does have a shield, so you would subtract the shield value from the attack.
He would consult that, and he would consult the guard's modifier card to see if that did anything for him.
Right.
Because sometimes those cards will add a shield.
Yep.
So you need to remember to check, both spots.
Check everything.
So in that case, all of Jeb's attack just went straight to the guard, and he would take 4 damage, and he would put it on whatever number on the tracker that he hit, and that's the number 1 guy.
Oh, so it would all go there.
Yep. And that's basically how an attack works.
There are cards that when you flip them, they have a symbol that means that they're a rolling card. And when that happens, you would just flip the next card and kind of add it together. But in the base, in your
you don't get
initial
any
one,
of those.
you don't get any.
That's more advanced. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
There are reshuffle cards, though, that I'm sure Jeb's going to talk about.
In your attack modifier deck, there are 2 cards. The 2 times and the miss. So
the best card in your basic set and the worst card in your basic set. Once you draw those, it tells you to take your discard and at the end of the round and reshuffle it all back, so you get a fresh.
That's what that symbol means.
That's what that symbol means.
Okay.
I want to make it clear. Jeb mentioned it, but I want you to be very clear on. There are attacks that attack multiple enemies. So
let me talk about that real quick. There are cards that have certain symbols, like a grid, and it shows that this one would hit 3 different enemies. And then there are also cards that say target and a number behind it, and that lets you target multiple enemies.
As long as you're like in range or whatever.
Yeah.
So Jeb had said that you draw 1 for each enemy. So let's pretend he's able to attack both of these because he has a card that lets him do so. That means he would flip a modifier for this guy, and he would flip a modifier for this guy. So that's the attack modifier for just this fight. That's the attack modifier for just that fight. And that is universal for all the fights that you do. Yeah. Each monster or whatever, it's kind of like, well, let's see what happened with this guy.
You
which
just
is
totally destroy one guy.
Right, and totally with the other guy. And it happens.
Yeah.
And again, which we just mentioned, as you use these, they get discarded. Oh, look at, there's a nasty -2 until, look, see, I'm doing a lot of fighting. Ooh,
Wow.
I am flying through this deck. I'm going to go through the whole deck. Oh, holy, I've never seen this happen. Alright, there it is. So I finally got my awesome attack off. Alright, everybody else finishes their turn. It's the end of the round. Everything goes back in and I shuffle.
Yep.
And hopefully that's very clear because Jeb said it and I just showed you exactly how it would work.
Yep. And let's talk about disadvantage and advantage because that involves that deck. There are things in this game that cause you to have advantage or disadvantage.
All right.
We don't know any advantages yet, but the disadvantage, one of them is,
and since I'm a caster, I know it, is that if I am adjacent in melee position and I use a ranged attack, that causes disadvantage. Like I'm too close.
Right.
All right. So what happens in disadvantage? Okay, I declare an attack against this guy. I'm disadvantaged. I flip one card and then I flip another card, and I have to take the worst. So I'm going to cheat, and I'll be like, this is really what I got. I know you guys understand this, but let's have a good example. Those are the two cards I flipped. I'm disadvantaged. I have to take that, and that gets discarded.
Yep.
Alright, so this is the one I played.
Now, if you were far away and some card had given you advantage, what would you do for an attack?
Alright, if I have an advantage, I get to flip over two cards and take the better. So in this case, this actually worked out, I would not have to take the -1, and the full effect of my attack would go off.
Now, there are some extra rules for advantage and disadvantage with the cards that are drawn, but we will not go into them because they involve the rolling cards, and you can look in the book for that.
Yeah, because, like I said,
it gets fancy with those. So.
There's a lot of stuff that gets fancy. Yeah. This is probably taking a while anyways, and you're like, whoa, and these are the basics, honestly.
Yeah. And then there are also some attacks that either generate elements or use elements, which Mickey talked about in the components.
Yep. It's kind of interesting, though. It's almost like counter to some of the other games that you've seen, I think. Like, at least until you get used to it. Like, when I see this, I'm like, oh, I get to use this. That's not a use, that's a generate.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's wide open, it's like, oh, that one triggered.
So now the field is full of fire.
Yep.
And then I know
Other
you have
people
something.
And here is something that lets me use it. Notice that the fire symbol is X'd out. That means consume it.
So.
Right. And then that part goes off. Now I still get this. I don't have to have all of these. Right. So I would get this, and now I would get that.
It's kind of like a bonus.
Exactly.
And one key thing is you cannot consume the element that you created on your turn.
That's correct. Now somebody else could use it, right, or I can use it on my turn, or on my next turn if somebody else hasn't used it up.
And monsters can even use it too. Alright, and then the last thing I have for heroes are looting and money tokens. So when you kill a monster that is just populated on the board, you will
drop a loot token.
Bloop. And that is worth a certain amount of money depending on
your level
of scenario. But
isn't that yours?
Yeah, but I was gonna.
Oh, sorry.
If you are here and you play a card that says loot and there's a number behind it, say 2, then anything
2 would be nice.
Anything within range of your character of 2 distance,
he picks it up.
Pick it up. So if I looted 2, or Mickey looted 2 from here, he would get that.
Right.
Also,
otherwise,
yeah. Also, if you move onto one of these tokens and end your turn, then you automatically pick it up. So that would go to Mickey too. So that's what looting is. Pretty much picking up the money tokens on the board.
So remember, the loot and the treasure on the board is it's either generated by your card or it's an end of the turn thing. There isn't really an action that's like, oh, I stepped over it, I just automatically get it or whatever. You gotta work for it.
Okay, so I think we talked about everything that can be done on a character turn.
Yep.
So let's talk about monster turns.
Alright. I'll move him back a little bit.
Say Mickey finished his turn at initiative 20, and now it is the guard's turn because it's initiative 30, right?
Yep.
So what's going to happen is you determine the order that the monsters are going to activate. So elite monsters activate before normals, and then you start with the lowest number and go higher is the activation order. So on our board right now, no elite monster, so don't got to worry about that. But which is going to be the first monster to activate?
Number 1.
Yep. So what you're going to do is figure out the monster who's activating. Then you look at
what
the
he gets to
ability
do this
card,
turn, right?
and it tells you what he does. So
He moves.
This says move +1. So we're going to look at his card, and his movement is a 3.
Ooh.
So he gets to move 4.
Wow. So now here's another key to the game. At this point, the monster is going to focus on a target. Focuses on the on a hero, and the way it does that is it first focuses on the closest hero. If there's a tie between the heroes, it focuses on the lowest initiative. Now here's an example of why Jeb and I said, remember what your initiative was for the round. So back to moving a monster.
So he moves 4, and it's 1, 2, 3 to me, and 1, 2, 3, 4 to Mickey. So I'm closest. So he's going to move to me.
And so 1, 2, we'll just stop him right there.
Now, if it was like this, and it was 1, 2, 3 to me, 1, 2, 3 to Mickey, we would look at our initiative. Mickey has the lowest initiative, and he would actually move right in front of Mickey. But that's not how it is, so that's where we're at now.
And then he would. The second thing on the card says attack, but he has a -1.
Yep. So his attack is a 2, but with the -1, it's a 1.
1. So Jeb would consult.
So here's the monster attack modifier deck.
Oh yeah, forgot.
And flip it. Hey, look at that.
Now he just missed because he got a -1.
Yep.
So remember, his attack is a 2. He has a -1 for that, and his attack modifier caused a -1. So that guy's turn is over, and you move to the next highest
One quick thing.
guard.
He attacked me but did no damage. If he had some kind of status effect associated with it, it would still go off.
That's true.
So just throw that out there. We won't go into all the status effects, but
all right. So, and we probably won't do every single one of these. I'm sure Jeb wants to show an example. So when this guy activates, it is a tie, which Jeb went over briefly before, and so he's going to move. But this time, even he's not going to go towards Jeb because it is a tie. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. He's going to go to the person with lower initiative, which is me. So he runs up there. He still has a -1. He'll flip an attack card for me. Yes, he got a -1. And I say yes big time because I'm a spellcaster and I'm weak. So he missed me. That's really good for me, other than the fact is that I'm might be closer here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's great. It's another tie. So I would have to go through all that again.
yeah.
We won't worry about it at this time. And that continues until all of these have taken their turn.
And then that would be the end of the guard's turn.
Yep.
And then next up is me, so I would just do my turn, but you already kind of know what you do on heroes' turns.
Okay, so the other thing is that if your monster card, which let me show you real quick. So let's pretend that these bandit archers were out. Notice on their card, their ranged actually has a number. On the bandit guards, they didn't have a number.
Right.
Okay, so this monster is ranged. So the way that works in terms of movement, and we're just going to pretend here, well, we won't even really pretend, is that if it's an archer, they will only move close enough so that they can shoot their target or zap their target, or however you want to call it. They will move within range and stop. And they will move to the maximum range and stop. Not like, oh, let me move him up close so I know that I can get him in melee next time. They will stop as soon as they can hit you. So that should be pretty clear to you, but let's pretend this was a ranged thing. He has a range. He has a range of 2. He's going to move up 1, and he's going to stop, and he's going to take a shot, assuming that he has attack. Which is the other important thing to remember is you're only doing what is on those cards. because some of the cards might not even have an attack.
Yep. Now, if this range guy was here and range of 2 and he attacks you, what would he do?
He would be at disadvantage, and he would have to draw 2 cards and take the worst out of the attack modifier.
No.
Oh.
If that guy was right there and he had a range attack of 2 and he had a move before.
Oh, the
attack.
move before. I thought you were going for the disadvantage. I'm sorry. Jeb was still on the move.
Yeah.
I was on the attack, so I'll blame Jeb.
Okay.
He is so agreeable. But yes, just to clarify all that muddle that I just caused, if he was here at the start of his turn and he was a ranged person, he will move back so he does not have disadvantage.
Right. Because if he was next to you and attacked, he would have disadvantage.
Right.
Now, if he can't move away, then he's stuck at disadvantage.
Because, like, for some reason, if we had him cornered or something like that,
yeah,
then they can't move through. They can't move through us, just like we can't move through them. So
if you're an archer in a corner with 2 heroes in front of you, I think you are at a disadvantage.
Pretty much.
So, we went over character turns and monster turns. So let's talk about a long rest real quick.
So the point of the rest, if you kind of calculate it so far, you're going to be playing cards, and you only have a hand of 10, or in my case 8, and they're getting discarded, or they're getting in the lost zone. Wait a second, I'm going to run out of cards. Here's where rest comes into play. Jeb's going to talk about rest.
If it's your turn and you don't have cards to play, or you just want to rest, you can take a long rest. To take a long rest, you need 2 cards in your discard pile. What you're going to do is it takes up your entire turn, and it has an initiative of 99, so you actually wait to do the rest action until after everybody else does their stuff. And then what you're going to do is heal 2 life, so you gain back 2 health. You lose,
Turn your dial.
Yep. You lose one of the cards in your discard, and you get to choose.
Right, so I pick up my entire discard. I pick out a card that I don't want, or that's the least. I want all my cards, but I'll try to pick which one I think I might need the least, and I will put it into the lost section.
Yep. And then the rest of the cards go to your hand.
And then you get them back. So.
And also, any items that you have that were exhausted get refreshed.
Right. And exhausted in this game is basically the tap, like a magic card or whatever other game that has an exhaust or a tap or a big, turn sideways or whatever you want to call it. So that is the way that you're able to get cards back into your hand. But as you can see, there's a cost to do it. And then...
So this phase was all the turns being done. So once that phase is over, it's the cleanup phase. And the cleanup phase, you just kind of like go through these steps, and I'll read the steps. So first thing, shuffle all the decks if you drew a card that had the shuffle in the corner. So
right.
if you saw the attack modifiers.
Which we showed you a couple times. Remember, so any deck that came up with the reshuffle symbol is now reshuffled and reset.
Yep. And then after you do that, any elements that
are in strong move to waning.
Yep.
And then
if there was something in
waning, it goes to inert.
Yep. So all the elements go down one area. Then all your active card, or some active cards might get discarded or lost. You would check that. It's dependent on the card. And then here is an important thing. You can choose to perform a short rest. And you're like, short rest?
Yep.
That sounds pretty
better
good,
than long
right?
rest, right? You know, because I got to do that at the end of the turn. So, yep, what Jeb just said. So at this point in time in the round, you can actually do what's called a short rest. The conditions are fairly the same. There's a couple differences. You do have to have at least 2 cards in your discard pile.
Yep.
You are not going to get the heal.
Nope.
But you will be able to get cards back. But here's the kicker. You take your entire discard pile again. This time, look, we're going to flip it over. We're going to shuffle it up. And guess what? You have to put you have to lose a card at random. So I'm going to take this one, and was probably my luck, my best card in the deck. But I do get these back, so I live to spell Keeper another day.
If that card, you really, really wanted that card, you could lose 1 health to randomly lose a different card from your discard, and then you get to keep it. But you can only do that once for that short rest. And then after anybody performs short rest, you're going to move the round tracker if you're keeping track of rounds. And that's it for a round in the scenario. And once you finish a round, pretty much start another round, and you just keep going and going until the game or the scenario ends.
One thing that we overlooked when we were talking about fighting the monsters.
I blame it because the monsters were really bad and did no damage to us.
Yeah. Well, that actually is probably a good point. We didn't have to suffer the damage, but we did forget to tell you how we take damage. As in, we the heroes. You know, if you're gonna end up taking damage, which, let's say something hit me and I got 3 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage, whatever. 3 damage would be really bad for me, since I'm lower than what you are. So I have a choice. I can just suffer the 3 damage and reduce my health from wherever it started. Level 1, I start at 6 health.
Ooh, half your life?
Yeah. So, do I really want to go down half my life? Well, you do have an option. You can choose to not discard, put a card from your hand into the lost pile.
Yep.
And if you do, it blocks it all.
Yep.
Okay?
If you don't want to lose one from your hand, you can lose 2 from your discard.
You can lose 2 from your discard too.
So
it's just awful. I don't even, the only time I would ever do that would be end game.
Yeah.
And I know you guys, if you're just watching this, you haven't played this game, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But trust me, you would never, ever do that probably at the beginning of the game or very early on. Maybe as a last ditch because you're going to die. I don't know. But it's just awful to lose cards because if you didn't catch on, even though it's not your life, the cards kind of are your life. Because if you can't rest and you can't get cards back in your hand,
that's what I'm going to talk about.
You're going to what, Jeb?
Become exhausted.
Exhausted.
And
sucks.
You can become exhausted when you have 0 HP or you can't play 2 cards at the beginning of your turn. And exhaustion is not fun because you remove your character from the board and you are out of the scenario.
It's not just if you can't play 2 cards. It's if you can't play 2 cards and you don't have 2 cards in your discard because you can still take a long rest.
You can still take the rest. Correct.
So if you can't do either of those things, so basically what they're trying to say is if you don't have 2 cards to play, like you're down to 1, you're screwed. And if you're looking at your board and it's like, you have no way to get any back.
Right.
Like, in what I mean by get any back is
take a long rest.
Take a long rest. So even if you, I mean, I don't know how long. I'm not even going to get into it. I had a scenario that was like way too complicated. I'm not even going to talk about it.
Just know you become exhausted.
Yes.
When you become exhausted, remove your character from the board.
Oh, Mickey's exhausted.
You don't participate anymore.
Jeb's dead.
However, you still get any experience and gold that you collected during the scenario. So it's not all bad.
But it's pretty bad.
Yeah. All right. Another thing I wanted to talk about was equipment. So the equipment that you have, there's certain limits. You can only have like 1 helmet, 1 chest item, I think 2 hands, and then the number of like little bag items is dependent on your level. But what you do is you put the items under or near your board, and if some of them are like permanent abilities, some are consumable, which I think both of those are consumable.
So the X's are consumable, so basically that means once I use it, I flip it over.
Yep. And then this guy is the one that exhausts, so if I use it, I just exhaust it.
Right. And when would he get that back? When he does a long rest.
Long rest gets the exhausted card back. The
These-
consumed items are gone for the scenario.
Right.
You don't lose them in the campaign. You just lose them for the rest of the scenario. Alright, then there is healing in the game. So, ways to heal. Long rest. There are attacks, kind of like attacks. It just says heal and then...
Usually gives a range.
Yeah,
or
so
whatever.
you can heal other people, you can heal yourself, and then some status effects, if you heal them, they have certain conditions that happen. So,
some of the monsters heal themselves too.
Yeah.
That's ugly.
Summoning. Monsters can summon, heroes can summon stuff. When things are summoned, you will place the summon token on the board adjacent to whoever summoned it, and then whatever little corresponding token.
You just keep that in your area so you remember whose is whose, basically.
And then one of the key things about summoned, or things that were summoned, is that they act like monsters. Like, the player does not actually control the summoned item, creature, whatever. It just has the logic of what a monster would do to attack.
Right, so it's just... So, a summoned... If Jeb summons something, which he can't summon, but Gary can.
Yeah.
If he summons something, that thing's gonna hone in on an enemy and just go
Whatever
try
is
to get
closest.
it. Yep, that's what it's
So
gonna try to do.
I can't be like, oh, that guy way over here, attack him. Nope,
Right.
That's not how it works. And then there are the overlay tiles. Some of them block movement, like these tables. You can't move through them. You have to go around them.
You can fly through them.
Yep.
You can jump over them.
Yep. Some things hurt. Some of the overlay tiles hurt you, like the traps. If you land on them, they deal damage to you and they get removed. I think hazardous terrain does damage, but it doesn't get removed from the board. Some affect movement, so there's some terrain cards that slow you down. These don't ever block line of sight. So the last thing, how do you end a scenario? So you either succeed...
How do we end? We usually die.
Yeah. So it can end in success or failure, but if you're watching us play, it's going to be a lot of failure, right?
I don't know if we can figure out these cards, maybe.
So for success, you just have to meet the goal that's in the scenario book.
Mm-hmm.
For failure is either all heroes are exhausted, or if there is a fail condition and you meet it, then you fail. But what happens is, either way, you get the experience and gold that you collect during the scenario.
Which you can keep track of on your player pad.
Yep. And if you succeed, you actually get bonus experience listed in the table in the book, dependent on whatever level you were playing at.
Catch that, folks. Catch that. If you succeed, you can have the bonus.
Right. And then...
I think that also goes for your cards, too, right, Jeb? You have to be successful to get the checkmark cards?
Yeah, that's
correct?
the next thing.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted Jeb.
Yeah. You check to see if you get the battle reward from your battle goal cards. So if you were able to complete your battle goal for the scenario, you would get your check marks on your player pad. And that's all the notes I have. So
that is an overview
yeah,
of gameplay.
That's an overview. We didn't go through everything.
No, we didn't go everything, but during gameplay, you'll hear us, talk about stuff. We'll try to figure stuff out, things like that. Like I said, or like we both said, we're doing this a little bit different. So even though we try to film most of the stuff relatively, I'll use the word raw, so to speak, this is going to be even more raw, because you're going to, Jeb will edit as much as as much as possible, but you're going to see a lot of, actual gameplay, learning, whatever. We have I don't know, I'm going to say we probably have 85-90% grasp on the game at this point, but it is there is a lot going on. So anyways, hopefully you'll enjoy watching us try to get through Gloomhaven.